Mrs. Swift, when you returned from London to Monticello, what did you find?
I found that my baby was no longer in the Scott house. They had turned him over to my husband.
Turned him over? Why did they do that?
I don't know. I assume it was because Logan asked for him, and since Mr. Scott was Logan's best friend, he just did as he was asked.
You mean you left no instructions that they were to do this?
Certainly not. I knew that they were a young couple. They didn't have any children yet, so I figured they could take better care of my baby than Logan, who was living the life of a bachelor and running around day and night. And...
You were saying, Mrs. Swift?
I naturally assumed that, Logan wasn't able to give my son proper care, just like I don't think he can now.
Objection, Your Honor. This is an unqualified opinion.
Yes, just answer the questions, please, Mrs. Swift.
Mrs. Swift, now what did you do when you learned that the Scotts had given your husband your baby without your permission?
I tried to get him back. I love my son. He means everything in the world to me, so I went to several lawyers in Monticello.
And did you succeed in getting advice?
No one could tell me what to do, so I decided to do what Logan did. I just took him back.
Did you do anything illegal?
No, absolutely not.
Excuse me. Would you mind?
Mrs. Swift, I asked you if you did anything illegal.
What?
Thank you.
No, absolutely not. I swear. Was take my own baby home from the hospital. A mother has a right to do that, doesn't she?
Objection, Your Honor. It's Mr. Rutledge's job to ask the questions.
Yes, please refrain from making comments, Mrs. Swift.
Mrs. Swift, your little son was seriously ill, wasn't he?
Yes, he was. And he became ill while in the care of my husband, which tells you something about the quality of care he was receiving.
Objection, Your Honor. The witness's hatred is making her make unfounded opinions.
Yes, I'll sustain. Mr. Rutledge, would you mind if I addressed several questions to Mrs. Swift on this matter?
Certainly, Your Honor.
Thank you. Now, Mrs. Swift, you say that you simply took the baby home from the hospital. Does that mean you removed him without proper hospital release?
No, sir. He was recovered at the time. I simply took him home and gave him very good care, like Mrs. Thomas said.
Your Honor, it should be pointed out to you at this time that Mrs. Swift was not the parent that had the baby admitted to the hospital.
Mr. Nelson, you will have an opportunity to cross-examine the witness.
Yes, sir.
Now, after you took the baby, Mrs. Swift, what did you do?
I found a nice place to live. A place where he could have a room of his own, and we were very happy.
Well, very well. I have no more questions, Mr. Rutledge.
Nor do I, Your Honor.
Very well. Mr. Nelson.
Mrs. Swift, you say your marriage broke up because of your husband's career, his work.
That was one of the reasons, yes.
Wasn't another reason infidelity? Your infidelity?
That's a lie. That's something he made up in order to take my baby away from me.
Mr. Nelson, unless you can show that the problem of the marriage directly affects the welfare of this child, you must not continue this line of questioning.
Your Honor, the character of the contesting parties here would... Yes, Your Honor. We'll save that for later. Well, Mrs. Swift, let's go back to the night that you went to April and Draper Scott's house. Was your son Jamie there at the time?
Yes, he was.
Before you arrived?
April was taking care of him at the time.
I see. And when you arrived, you had already purchased your ticket to London. A single ticket to London?
Yes. I bought a single ticket to London because I did not want to take my baby with me. He was only 8 months old. I did not want him to make the trip.
Because you intended on living there?
I intended on visiting there.
Well, for a short time?
Yes, I just wanted to visit my mother.
And you had every intention of returning to Monticello.
Yes, my son was here.
Then why did you buy a one-way ticket to London?
What difference does that make? I didn't know when I was going to return.
You did buy a one-way ticket, didn't you?
Yes, I bought a one-way ticket. It was cheaper. I didn't have very much money. I assumed my mother would give me money to get home.
And the real reason was that you never really intended on coming home. You never intended on coming back to the United States, to Monticello, or to your son.
That's not true. I'm here. Doesn't that prove it?
You're here because you had a fight with your mother.
No.
Oh, do you get along well with your mother?
Yes.
I see.
Sometimes. It all depends.
The real truth is that you have had bitter disagreements with your mother for years. She was less than cordial when you arrived in London, and she was very happy to see you come back to Monticello.
That is a lie.
Miss Alcestane, look, Mr. Nelson, I don't see the point of all this.
Well, Your Honor, the point is that this witness is twisting the facts. The truth is that she gave away her son to the Scots. She had no intention of ever coming back from London, and she only did because she had a fight with her mother. When she saw her husband out of spite...
Mr. Nelson, you seem to have launched into your summary a bit early, now haven't you?
Yes, sir. Sorry, I have. Now, Mrs. Swift, did you give April and Draper Scott a letter giving them permission to raise your son?
I did give them a letter. Yes, that's true.
What did it say?
I gave them the right to take care of Jamie during my absence. I thought I should give them proper authorization. I am the wife of a lawyer.
Authorization to babysit? Isn't the truth that the letter said that they could take care of Jamie if they wish, raise him if they want, even adopt him if
That's
they wanted
a lie.
Yes, and then you found that letter and you destroyed it 3 weeks later, correct?
No.
You asked April Scott to give it to you, and then you deliberately let it fly out of your hands on the terrace of the
April Scott destroyed that letter, and I bet she did it deliberately so she could come here and lie.
May I remind you that April Scott has not testified yet?
No, but she will, and I know what she's going to do. She's going to come up on this stand and lie.
Now, Mrs. Swift, I have to caution you about these outbursts.
Your Honor, I am sorry, but I am very upset. They are trying to take away my baby from me just out of spite.
The same spite that motivated you when you saw your husband taking care of his own baby.
He had no right. He wasn't even the legal parent.
He was the boy's father, wasn't he?
Yes, he was.
You don't deny that, do you?
No, I don't.
Wasn't it only natural when you went off to London that you should ask him to take care of his own baby?
He wasn't capable. He didn't know how to take care of an infant. The only thing he knows about are indictments and courtroom procedures.
You hate your husband.
No, I love my baby.
Was it hate that motivated you? Was it jealousy that made you go into that hospital and steal that baby?
Objection, Your
I'll
Honor.
withdraw the question. When you took this baby, didn't you employ subterfuge to do it?
I don't know what you're talking about.
Why didn't you just petition the court? I'm sure that's what the lawyers who you consulted told you to do.
No one wanted to take the case. They were all afraid to tackle the district attorney.
I see, yes. The real reason is that you didn't want him to come to court. You were afraid of what might be revealed here.
I didn't want to make a fuss, and neither did he. He was a public figure.
You stole that baby. You lied and you cheated. You manipulated to get that baby.
Yes! Because I loved him, and I'll do it again. I'll go to the moon if I have to get my baby back. I don't care whether it's legal or not.
No more questions, Your Honor.
Your Honor, request permission of the court to redirect.
Yes, go ahead.
Mrs. Swift, you stated that your purpose in going to London was to visit your mother. Is that correct?
Yes.
Was it because you felt you needed some emotional support?
Yes. I felt very alone.
Because of the breakup of your marriage?
Yes. I needed to talk to my mother. She was the only one who could have understood at the time.
So then this trip obviously meant a great deal to you.
Yes, it did.
Just as your mother meant a great deal to you.
Your Honor, this Mother's Day speech is very touching, but irrelevant.
Your Honor, I think it's extremely important to understand exactly what happened during the period of Mrs. Swift's absence as well as her return.
I will overrule the objection.
Yes, sir.
Now, Mrs. Swift, what did your mother advise you when you saw her?
My mother asked me if I wanted to bring Jamie over to London, and perhaps I wanted to live there for a while.
But you didn't think that was a very good idea?
No, she had her own life to live, and I didn't want to interrupt anything, so I came back to Monticello to get my baby and start a new life.
And so that's what you did?
Yes. As soon as I got my baby back.
Mrs. Swift, isn't it true that your mother visited you in your home only recently?
Yes. A couple of weeks ago. But she died in a tragic accident.
Yes. Yes, she died in a tragic automobile accident, didn't she?
Yes, and now I don't have anybody. The only person I have left is my son. All I have left is my baby.
Home sweet home.
It is sweet, too. You have no idea what a relief it is to be here after being in the hospital.
Well, I know. I spent a lot of time there myself.
Not as a patient. Hey, where is it?
Where's what?
My welcome home kiss.
Ah, it's coming right up. Welcome home, sweetheart.
Thank you. Thank you for taking such good care of me, too.
Oh, that wasn't me. Jeremy Stewart was your man.
Jeremy Stewart was my doctor. You're my man. You're my strength, my life, and my medicine, the best medicine in the world. And that's why I know I'm going to be all right.
I know you are, too. If you just take care of yourself.
Absolutely. Plenty of fresh air and sunshine.
How about the rest? Don't forget the rest. Matter of fact, you might even be lying down right now.
Not until I see Adam.
I think Mrs. Goodman has him out in the park. By the way, I asked Mrs. Goodman if she could stay over tonight.
Oh, you did? Why?
Oh, I just didn't think you'd want to cope with the little dynamo till you got your strength back.
Well, I suppose that's a good idea. Being in the hospital, being in bed for a few days just takes strength out of you.
There's another cause for your weakness, you know.
Did you really think I was going to forget? The words aplastic anemia are flashing in front of my eyes like a neon sign.
Mrs. Goodman can stay a little longer, maybe even a week.
Miles, don't be silly. I'm going to be fine tomorrow.
Nicole, give yourself a few days. Let her stay.
You know what'll happen. She won't just take care of Adam. She'll take care of you. She'll take care of me. She'll take care of Jody. She'll do all the cooking.
Oh, well, I admit that would be a sacrifice.
Oh, you don't admit any such thing. She's twice the cook that I am. Is that what you want? Are you after an improvement in the cuisine?
The cuisine is perfect. The cook is perfect. Couldn't be more perfect. Well, perhaps if she just took better care of herself.
It's bad grammar, you know. Nothing's more or less perfect. Perfect is perfect.
Perfect as you.
Good. I'll just have Mrs. Goodman for one night. And tomorrow I'll be totally on my own. Come on, look, if Nancy is going to be working for me this week, I won't be going in.
At least I'm glad you're not going to work. I'm a little bit worried that there's something down there that's causing this anemia of yours. Some chemical, maybe, that they use at the studio.
Yeah, but I don't see how that can be. Nobody else is sick.
Well, it's still a mystery why some people are sensitive and others aren't.
It is a mystery, isn't it? They know so little about curing it.
Oh, Lord, I wish you hadn't gotten hold of that damn textbook of mine. I tell you, you are a patient. You're not a doctor.
I wanted to know.
Well, the textbook happens to be 10 years old, and there's a lot more we know about the disease now than we did then.
Yeah. And sometimes it just goes away by itself. I'm going to be one of those lucky ones, you know. I'm always lucky. Why shouldn't I be lucky now?
Mr. Nelson, are you ready to call your first witness?
Yes, Your Honor. We'd like to call Mrs. April Scott.
Mrs. April Scott, please take the stand.
Place your left hand on the Bible and raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth so help you God?
I do.
State your name.
April Kavanaugh Scott.
Be seated.
Thank you.
Mrs. Scott, you're acquainted with both parties of this suit, right?
Yes, I am.
In fact, you're close enough to them that when they needed someone to take care of their boy for a short time, you would volunteer.
That's correct.
On the night that Raven Swift went to England, was Jamie Swift in your house?
Yes, I had been taking care of him for a couple of days while they were away on a business trip.
What happened that night?
Well, Raven came over and said that she and her husband had broken up and that she was taking off for London.
Can you describe exactly for us what happened?
Yes, I can.
Raven.
Hi, Draper. Where's April?
Raven, is that you?
Hi.
You didn't come here for Jamie, did you? I just put him up to bed. You said you wanted to stay.
Hey, don't look so worried. I didn't come here to take my little angel away. I came here to leave him for good. Oh, boy, if you two could see your faces right now, I don't know whether you're happy or sad. You look so stunned.
Well, yeah, I am. I can't imagine what you mean.
I mean exactly what I said. Aren't you happy? Honey, you've always told me how much you love my little boy. What's the matter? You just love him if he's only here a couple of hours?
Now, take it easy, Raven. You're 3 feet off the ground. You've been drinking or what?
Oh, I need a drink. I'm going on a plane and they petrify me. Well, say something. Do you want to take him or don't you? Because if you don't, I'll have to find somebody else. Now, I'm sure Geraldine Saxon would give me her millions if I would bundle up the little kid and give him to her, but I wouldn't do that for all the tea in China. Or I should say London, that's more appropriate.
Come on, Raven, now don't make jokes about this. It isn't funny.
I'm not making a joke. As a matter of fact, I don't have much of a sense of humor these days. That's one thing I hope I get back when I leave this horrid place.
Now, where are you flying?
You're not listening, Draper. I'm going to London. I've already got a ticket. I had a hard time, but there was a cancellation on the midnight flight, so I shall be flying across the Atlantic at midnight. Isn't that romantic?
Why are you doing this?
Oh, I think you know. I just have to get away from this dull, boring, ridiculous domestic life. I hate it. I didn't realize how much I hated it until Logan started this damn quarrel.
So it was Logan who started, huh?
Come on, Draper. I'm not going to clue you in on all the juicy details, even though I'd like to. No. I have to leave, and I haven't even packed yet, and it took me 2 days to pack on this trip upstate.
And you never did take the trip upstate, did you? I mean, you were sick.
Yes, well, I'm a lot better now. As a matter of fact, I've never felt better in my life because I know exactly what it is I want to do now. And the first thing I'm going to do is give Jamie to a brand new mommy. You.
Oh, my God. Raven, you're serious.
Uh-huh. And I'll show you just how serious I am. I have it all written out. Now, this may not be the most perfect legal document in the world, Draper, so you might want to look it over and improve it a little bit, but essentially, it gives you and April all rights to Jamie's care, feeding, and upbringing. Anything you want to do with him is just fine with me.
Mrs. Scott, do you have the letter that Raven Swift gave you?
No, it's gone. Because Raven Swift got rid of it. Yes, Mrs. Swift asked me for that letter. She was very anxious to get her hands on it.
Because she knew it would be condemning evidence in a custody trial.
Objection, Your Honor. Calling for a conclusion.
You're sustained.
The reason you didn't give the letter back to Mrs. Swift was because you knew she was intent on destroying it.
Yes, and because Mr. Swift had also asked me for the letter, and, well, I felt he had more right to it.
Because, Your Honor, the letter revealed that Raven Swift literally and actually gave away her own son.
Your Honor, this is testimony about evidence nobody's even seen.
Mrs. Scott, you say that Mrs. Swift literally destroyed this letter before your eyes?
Yes, Your Honor. She'd let it fly right off my terrace, and I live on the 32nd floor. The letter was never found.
The letter's gone. We only have her word against Mrs. Swift's admittedly questionable testimony as to what it said. No more questions.
Well, Mr. Rutledge.
Remember what I said.
I really don't think
Just
it's a...
do what I said.
Now, Mrs. Scott, you say that you gave this letter to Logan Swift, despite the fact that his wife asked you for it first?
Yes, that was my decision.
Why did you favor one parent over the other?
Because I believed that Logan Swift would make a better parent for his little boy, and because I also felt that the contents of the letter should be revealed.
Are you absolutely sure about the contents of this letter? Are you sure it wasn't just permission for you to keep Jamie Swift for only a brief period of time?
No, the letter gave us the right to raise that little boy as our very own son.
Mrs. Scott, how well do you know Logan Swift?
We're very good friends. He is my husband's best friend.
You say was because until quite recently you thought your husband was dead, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
In fact, for the last 6 months, you've been living the life of a widow.
Objection, Your Honor. All this questioning is irrelevant.
I promise connection, Your Honor.
Very well. You may proceed.
Mrs. Scott, isn't it true that during the 6 months that you believed your husband dead and buried, that you and Logan Swift drew closer together? That you became more than just friends? That, in fact, you actually fell in love? That you were lovers? Mrs. Scott, you say that you decided to give this letter to Logan Swift, despite the fact that his wife asked you for it first?
Yes, that was my decision.
Why did you favor one parent over the other?
Because I believed that Logan Swift would make a better parent for the little boy, and I felt that the truth about the letter should come out, considering its contents.
Are you absolutely sure about the contents of this letter? Are you sure that it wasn't merely permission for you to keep that baby for only a brief period of time?
No, the letter stated that we were to raise him as our very own son.
Mrs. Scott, how well do you know Logan Swift?
Well, he's a very good friend. Is my husband's best friend.
You say was because until recently you thought that your husband was dead, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
In fact, for the last 6 months, you've been living the life of a widow.
Objection, Your Honor. This testimony
I promise
is irrelevant.
connection, Your Honor.
Very well, you may proceed.
Mrs. Scott, isn't it true that during the 6 months that you thought your husband was dead and buried, that you and Logan Swift drew closer together? That you became more than just friends? That in fact you actually fell in love? That you were lovers?
Objection, Your Honor. This is only an attempt to embarrass and disconcert this witness.
Mr. Rutledge, I still fail to see that you have made a legitimate connection in the case at hand.
Well, Your Honor, I believe the witness is falsifying this evidence out of a personal bias.
Your Honor, we object to these allegations.
Yes, sustained. Now, Mr. Rutledge, if you wish to prove the witness is perjuring herself for personal or other reasons, you'll have to do more than make assertions. That is not the way to impress this court.
Excuse me, Your Honor, but I believe I have a right to answer that question. I would like to answer it.
Well, very well, Mrs. Scott.
It isn't true. It just is not true.
You're not in love with Logan Swift?
The only reason I am in this courtroom is because I know the truth, and I think everyone else should know it too.
Now, Mrs. Scott, the night that Mrs. Swift left for London, before she boarded the plane, when she came to your home, you said that the baby, Jameson Swift, was already in your home. Is that right?
I had been taking care of him for the past couple of days.
You're very fond of that little baby, weren't you?
Yes, very fond.
Did you have any children of your own then?
No.
As a matter of fact, your doctor had just told you that you probably never could have children, didn't he?
Yes, but the doctors were wrong. I have a little girl.
Yes, but at the time, you despaired of ever having a family of your own, and that made you even more attached to little Jamie, didn't it?
I suppose so.
Did you want to keep him?
Yes, of course I did.
Yes, you did. In fact, Mrs. Scott, you wanted that very much, didn't you?
Why shouldn't I?
Mrs. Scott, isn't this the real truth? That you wanted a child of your own so badly that you indulged in a little wishful thinking? That you decided completely on your own that Mrs. Swift had given you that child to keep rather than merely ask you to care for it?
No, it was not wishful thinking. Mrs. Swift did give us her son, and she gave us a letter stating that he was ours.
Ah, yes, the alleged letter.
Look, the letter may not exist now, but I remember what it said.
Do you? Word for word?
Well, not exactly. It was a long time ago.
Well, tell us what you think it said.
I, Raven Swift, do hereby give April and Draper Scott the right to raise my son, Jameson Swift, as their very own. It was something like that.
Sounds very much like a legal document. Tell me, was Mrs. Swift an attorney?
You know she is not, but her husband is.
Yes, and your husband is too, isn't he?
Yes.
Tell me, Mrs. Scott, isn't it just possible that you're imagining this letter the way you wanted it to sound?
No. That is what the letter said, despite the fact that I don't remember the exact words.
Weren't the exact words more like, I, Raven Swift, do hereby give permission to my friends, Mr. and Mrs. Draper Scott, to care for my baby until my return from abroad?
No.
Objection, Your Honor. The counsel is putting words in the witness's mouth.
I'm going to overrule.
If Raven had not thrown that letter off my terrace, it would be here right now as proof.
Do you insist that Mrs. Swift deliberately destroyed this document?
She threw it away. That's the same thing.
Tell me, did she have it in her hand at the time?
Yes.
Well, then why didn't she simply tear it up? I mean, if she wanted it destroyed, wouldn't that have been the best way? Tear it up, burn it?
No. She wanted it to look like an accident. She said that the wind blew it out of her hand.
That is a lie. I never said that.
Mrs. Swift, we will have no more of these outbursts.
I'm sorry, but that woman is lying.
If you won't remain silent, I'll have you removed from this courtroom. Now, you may go ahead, Mr. Rutledge.
Tell me, Mrs. Scott, was there anybody else who witnessed this extraordinary event? Anyone else who saw Mrs. Swift presumably throw the letter from the terrace?
Yes, her husband, Mr. Swift, was there.
Oh, well, her husband, yes, and he'll gladly corroborate your story, won't he?
Look, I swear to you that the letter did exist, and if you don't believe me, you can ask my own husband.
But you just told us that your husband and Mr. Swift were best friends.
That doesn't mean he would lie for Mr. Swift.
Well, then why hasn't your attorney called him as a witness, too?
Objection, Your Honor. We don't need instructions from the opposing counsel as to how to conduct our case.
Yes, I'll sustain that objection.
Thank you.
Mrs. Scott, after Mrs. Swift left for England, after leaving the baby in your care, did your husband give the baby to Mr. Swift?
Logan is Jamie's father. He had every right to him.
Ah, but he wasn't the legal parent at the time,
He
was
is
he?
Jamie's father. How much more legal can you get?
Was it your idea to give the baby to him?
No,
Was it your husband's idea?
I suppose it was. Look, when Mr. Swift realized that his wife had no intentions of returning to Monticello and that she had given us Jamie permanently, he was rather justifiably upset.
So you just handed the baby over to him?
I told you he was entitled to
I didn't ask you that. I want to know if you voluntarily agreed to give the baby to Logan Swift. Or maybe it was done against your wishes.
I didn't necessarily agree with it at the time.
Why not?
Very selfish reasons, Mr. Rutledge. I wanted to keep him.
Wasn't it because you knew it was wrong? Because you had faithfully promised to keep that baby only until Mrs. Swift returned?
No.
Wasn't it because you realized you had broken a solemn vow? That you had betrayed a woman who thought you were her friend?
Oh, this is ridiculous. Raven Swift doesn't have any friends.
That's right. Right now, Raven Swift doesn't seem to have any friends. Not in this courtroom, anyway. Just as she no longer has any family. No more questions, Your Honor.
Very well. You may return to your seat, Mrs. Scott. Mr. Nelson, if you wish to call another witness. Mr. Nelson.
Oh, yes, Your Honor.
Do you wish to call another witness?
Yes, of course, Your Honor. Your Honor, we'd like to call Detective Deborah Saxon to the stand.
Detective Deborah Saxon, please take the stand. Place your left hand on the Bible and raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
State your name.
Deborah Saxon.
Be seated, please.
So, when you learned that the baby had been taken from Monticello General unlawfully, what did you do?
Objection. If it was unlawful, why wasn't Mrs. Swift charged with a crime?
Well, I can answer that, Your Honor. Mr. Swift didn't wish to press charges against his wife at the time.
As a point in fact, Mr. Swift was advised that he should do exactly what his wife did. That is, steal the baby back again.
Objection.
Steal is a rather strong word, Mr. Nelson.
All right, Your Honor. Appropriate the baby back, but he chose not to do this. Now, when you found that the baby was taken from the hospital without the father's permission, what did you do?
We tried to locate Mrs. Swift and her son. It wasn't very easy because she had already left her hotel and didn't leave a forwarding address.
Sounds as if she were expecting someone to come looking for her.
I'm sure she was.
Well, what did the police have to do in order to find her?
Hey, just a moment, Mr. Nelson. I'd like to question this witness. Detective Saxon, was this an official police investigation, or were you acting as a private citizen?
Oh, yes, we received a complaint, and it's our job to follow it up.
And the complaint came from Mr. Swift, I assume?
Yes, sir.
I see.
You found the missing mother and child, didn't you?
Yes, in 10 days.
And what happened then?
Detective Calvin Stoner and I went to her new apartment. We wanted to question her about her activities and her intentions.
And in what condition did you find this new apartment?
Well, frankly, it was a mess. The place was dirty. The child looked like he hadn't been changed or cleaned. There was a teenage babysitter there.
Objection, Your Honor. Since when do the police investigate welfare conditions? Now, I suggest that this is pure prejudice on the part of this witness.
Well, there was no investigating to be done. Everything was there in plain sight. The apartment was a mess, and so was the child.
Thank you, Detective Saxon. No more questions.
Very well. Mr. Rutledge.
Miss Saxon, you say that you had difficulty locating Mrs. Swift and her son. Do you generally have difficulty finding the addresses of ordinary citizens?
No, we don't. Mrs.
It was a new apartment, you know. Don't you think it's only natural that a new address and phone number might be a little more hard to find? Although, of course, one would think that a trained police officer wouldn't have that difficulty.
Mrs. Swift didn't want us to
find her. And the mess that this
her.
apartment was in. Let me ask you something, Miss Saxon. Did you ever move into a new apartment?
Yes, I have.
Did you ever see a new apartment that wasn't a mess for the first couple of days?
Well, I don't think.
And I want to ask you one more thing, Miss Saxon. Were you aware of a report by Mrs. Benita Thomas about the conditions in Mrs. Swift's apartment?
That report occurred
Now, don't you
after
think that an experienced welfare worker knows just a little bit more about this kind of thing than a police person?
Mr. Rutledge.
Thank you, Miss Saxon. No more questions, Your Honor.
Very well. You may step down, Miss Saxon.
Say it. I did a lousy job.
Well, that's not true, Cliff. Things went about the way I expected they would.
And we were shot down in flames. You know that as well as I do. Bet you wish Mike were here instead of up at the governor's conference.
Did you just stop it? You did a fine job with April. You impressed the judge. I'm sure he could see that April was telling the truth.
She was fabulous. He made it look as if she did it all for love. Oh, well, I mean, Raven and the baby, not a...
I know what you meant.
I'm sorry about all that gossip stuff coming out. We knew it would.
That is why I did not want April on the stand.
Oh, we knew who put him up to that one. I should say who put him down to that one.
Well, it was Raven's idea, there's no doubt about that. Well, what would you say to a hamburger, huh?
Right now?
Yeah.
I'd say hamburger. I don't think I could take you now.
Swift.
Do you have a statement for the press? I'm sorry, no, excuse me. I could kill you. Open that door, you coward.
If you promise to be a lady.
Do you realize what you did? You stood there and waved that thing all over the place. You think it's real funny, don't you?
I did find it a bit amusing, yes.
Yeah, and then you dropped the thing at Cliff Nelson's feet.
He didn't even bother looking at it. People are not as observant as you think.
Elliot, if he had looked at it, he would have stood up, stopped the whole trial, and they would have proved that I lied.
Come on, nothing happened. Why are you so worried? As a matter of fact, I think things went pretty well for you this morning.
You could have lost this case for me.
You mean with, this? Oh, give that back. I need that, darling.
I need it more than you do. This isn't the letter. It's a bill.
Yeah, it's my laundry bill. From the Unicorn. Huge, isn't it? All those tablecloths and napkins. Come on, darling.
You are a monster.
Can't speak that way to your best friend.
I don't have any friends. Didn't you hear the court?
Oh, yes, that was a very touching scene, wasn't it? How many times did you rehearse it? Well, just wait until you inherit your baby's millions. You'll have more friends than you know what to do with. How about some lunch?
With you in public, never.
I thought you'd feel that way. See you later.
When I get my baby's millions, I won't need any friends. I won't need anybody.
Leave. I have to get down to the paper if I'm going to file a story today. Nancy, what are you going to say? Just going to state the facts, that's all.
And the facts are bad. Let's face it. The judge will probably do the usual thing and give custody of the child to the mother.
It didn't look as though she'd been proven unfit, did it?
Not to me, it didn't.
But look, what was it the judge said about awarding custody and sole control?
Oh, well, the court insists that the parent who gets custody of the child also have complete control. That way the child only has one day-to-day source of authority.
Uh-huh. The authority of a mother like Raven. I wonder what that's worth.
Look, this drink is on me.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Be careful.
Nancy. Hello again. Hello, Deb. Hello again.
You can join us for a bit, can't you?
Oh, well, I was on my way up. Yeah, just for a minute. Yeah.
Nancy, I hope you're going to be able to find some encouraging words for the Monticello News.
Well, I guess the best I can do is be very brief and non-committal.
Something tells me you're not optimistic either.
Deborah, as a writer, I'm supposed to be objective, aren't I? Well, I do have to go. Take care. See you.
Okay, finish telling me about how you broke through Raven's blockade.
Well, I simply bullied my way into Nadine's hospital room. I told her I wasn't going to let 30 years of friendship go down the drain. And it worked. Then I proceeded to tell her what I thought she ought to know about Raven's behavior.
Do you think there was a lot of hostility between Raven and her mother?
My dear, they didn't get along from the time Raven was 7.
Would you say that Raven hated her mother?
Well, I would say that love and hate are the opposite sides of the same coin.
Well, I know they used to quarrel a lot about Ansel. I think that there was a lot of possessiveness, don't you?
Yes, I suppose so.
Well, don't you think that... Maybe I better not ask you that. There's somebody I could ask a question of. Will you excuse me?
I wanted to slip right through that floor when Raven's attorney started making those accusations about why I was testifying for Logan.
Yeah, you knew it might happen. You knew that Raven would pull out all the stops to win.
I know, but to say things so blatantly.
Come on, try not to dwell on it.
April. Hi.
Oh.
Hi, Deborah. Hello, Draper. I have to ask you a question.
Sure.
Do Do you have your father's address or phone number in London?
My father's not in London. He's doing some traveling right now. But I'll know more about where he is when he calls me tonight.
Oh, he's calling you tonight?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, great. Well, I have a couple of questions I'd like to ask him. So could I come over this evening?
Sure.
Well, I wonder why Deborah wanted to talk to your father. I guess it was about Nadine's accident, huh?
Yeah, probably. Who's Logan?
It's alone.
Logan!
Well, hello.
Hey, I thought you were eating with Nelson.
Yeah, he didn't have much of an appetite. I don't blame him. I don't think I have much one of myself right now.
Sit with us, please.
Sure, it's okay.
Just move this.
Thank you. Thank you, April. Thank you for all you did for me. And, Draper, I am so sorry that Rutledge brought up that garbage about April being biased.
I am biased. I want you to have custody of Jamie, not Raven. So I am biased in favor of Jamie.
We both feel that way, Logan.
Look, and you really don't have to thank me about anything because I didn't do such a hot job up there today anyway, so forget it.
Are you joking? You were perfect up there, wasn't she?
Yeah, I've been trying to tell her that for the last half hour.
Well, listen to the man. He's a lawyer, remember?
Neither one of you believe what you're saying, so just stop it.
No, you're right. Things don't look too bright right now.
Always another day.
I suppose. A case like this, though, is usually decided on the first day, so I'm not hoping for any miracles tomorrow. I made a decision.
About what?
Well, what I'm going to do, if I lose this case, if I lose my son, I don't think that I could stay around this town and watch Raven raise him.
You don't mean that. You're not going to leave him on a cellar.
If things go the way I think they're going to, that's exactly what I'm going to do.